Keep it tight.
Going green with a green ribbon cutting. The first non-tribal cannabis dispensary opened in the Twin Cities today. Rise Dispensaries is now selling recreational marijuana at several locations around the state. And it comes 2 years after Minnesota legalized marijuana. Joining us now is Eric Taubel, the Executive Director of the Office of Cannabis Management. Thank you so much for joining us. An exciting day, I have to imagine, for the office.
Yeah, it's very exciting for the office. We have a lot of people that have spent a bunch of time working to get us to this point. And so certainly I think the OCMers are feeling a sense of relief that we were able to get here.
So you had 5 businesses open in the metro area, and I know people are like, why did it take, it seemed like a slow process to get to this point. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so when Minnesota legalized, it legalized with a unique framework that was different than many other states. And as part of that framework, the legislature was hoping to build a sort of craft market similar to like craft breweries, craft distilleries, that was sustainable and offered people the opportunity to kind of build businesses that they could run for years, maybe pass down to their families. And so as we thought about how we wanted to launch the market, certainly we understood the interest people had in a quick launch where they would have access to products very fast. But we also understood this was a long-term project about building a sustainable market, an equitable market, and a market that produced the kind of good jobs that people could, go to for years. And so the other thing we then focused on was, how do we build the system on the front end so that we don't experience a lot of problems during the rollout, and rather we sort of build the structure where we put the house and then the house looks good for quite some time to come. And so that's what we've been focused on for the last 2 years, is kind of getting the infrastructure ready so that now as we're issuing those licenses, businesses are in a place where they can go ahead, open their doors, and be assured that the product that's coming through the door is safe, it's tested, and reliable. And
you talked about it a little bit. You said the people who grow pot can't sell it.
So Minnesota is different than a lot of states in that the legislature chose to segment the supply chain so that the largest cultivators or growers of cannabis and manufacturers of cannabis product aren't the same people generally that are going to be able to sell you the cannabis. There's some limited exceptions for smaller businesses that we call micro businesses or meso businesses, where someone could grow a small amount of cannabis, make a few products, and sell it directly to consumers. But that's another way in which I think the Minnesota market's going to look different, and hopefully, like I say, will allow for a market that is more sustainable and more successul long term.
So 5 businesses open in the metro area today, and I know that back in June, I think there were 600 people who applied. Yep. Is there a limit, or is there a number of how many businesses you want in the state?
So we identified in a market demand study before, I think at the end of 2023, that the state needed at least 200 or so dispensaries to kind of meet the demand that was anticipated Minnesotans would have. Through our licensing process, there's I think we have 12 or 1,400 of those micro businesses that are in the application status who could all open a retail location. We also have some larger retail licenses where someone could have 4 or 5 stores under the same brand. So we have the possibility of a lot more stores than we probably ultimately need.
Question, because you go around Uptown and there's like 3 different places that said dispensaries soon to open. Isn't there, I guess, zoning of some sort where it has to be, 5 miles away or anything like that?
Yeah, so cannabis is in some ways a lot like other, it's like education where there's some local control aspects, right? So the state sets some standards, the locals set others. And zoning is really something that the state has said is the prerogative of local governments. And so, local governments have some ability to set zoning areas that might be for cannabis businesses, or what sort of zoning categories a business can operate within. The law also allows for some restrictions around proximity to parks where kids might go, or schools or daycares, but those decisions in large part are left to the local governments.
Is this similar to what's happening in Albert Lea there? Because I know we have a gentleman who is suing the city, but yet saying that you're approved by the state. He was approved, rather.
Yeah. So the process works that once the office either issues what we call preliminary approval, which is kind of like the you're almost there, or the actual license, the applicant then goes to the local government if they want to do retail to get a retail registration. And the local governments can restrict the number of retail registrations they give if they don't want to have more than a certain number of pot stores in their location. But how they issue those registrations is really up to them. Our guidance has been, if someone wants to limit retail registration, they should really be clear with applicants about what the process looks like.
All right. Eric, you can be very busy. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us and explain all this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah.